Well, you can be at the head of the race and still make cross racing fun like that guy. Um, and here we are at the Velocaus Humboldt Park race. I'm in the Cat 4-5 race. This is like my fourth race ever in cross. And so my goals were just to keep moving up. You can see here I'm in like the back row or second to back row. So I have to have a lot of people to move up. The other thing I wanted to do in this race was take some more risks. Before I was just sort of sitting in and being safe and, playing it safe. But this time I wanted to take some more risks to see how far I could push these limits. Cornering was also important. It was a little bit wet, and so I wanted to make sure I could corner well. And I really wanted to practice getting empty before this race so that I knew, so I could kind of gauge how hard I could go and be sort of like dead by the end, so that I gave it my all, so to say. I had 2 scout laps, which I didn't race at pace, so I didn't know how these corners were going to go. I did lower my pressure quite a bit from what I had originally set up before this start. And here you can see I start, and I have a good open space on the left here that I could have probably taken. But I get boxed in with all this traffic. And part of the things that happen with traffic is you get things like this. This guy's bike is about to go flying there. Oh yeah, smacking people dodging, people going around. Luckily, I get past that pretty quickly, and I keep moving up. I think I'm past, that was sort of a distraction for a lot of riders, but I think I was up like 10, 15 spots just off of that little start there, and people dropping their trains already, and I'm moving up. And you can see that was an outside line that might not have been ideal, and we'll talk about this a little bit more during this race, but the first lap, sometimes the sort of ideal line by yourself is not the ideal line when you're in a bunch of people. So even though you get bunched up with all this traffic, you gotta think about how to get around people in this first lap that you're gonna just have a hard time doing. And so you can take some risks, like I probably could have there. But again, you can see here, I take the outside. Look at everyone taking the inside line like maybe you could have. But now I moved up 4 or 5 spots just because it was the best spot or sort of best line to take when you have a whole bunch of traffic. But the other thing is so you can take some lines and sort of get around people in the beginning, but sometimes you got to take some risks. So right here you can see I'm about to get boxed in. And if I would have taken some risks and just shot between the two, maybe I wouldn't have been in that situation where now I'm like, there's a good space ahead of them. This guy, unfortunately, gets a little slippery out there. He almost crashes into that stake. But that gives me opens up a possibility for me to move up here. And so this corner here, you could take this pretty quick if you got to the outside like I do there, and then inside, and then fly through it. And that sort of is the name of the game this entire race for me, is that I did some really fast cornering, good lines throughout this entire race, and you'll see on other laps just how that puts me in better positions throughout the entire race. The other thing that's important is that when you do that, you can sort of take your own lines when you get out of traffic. So like here, right? I take the inside, maybe a little risky, like I wanted to do. I don't think that guy recognized where I was there. And so, I do take a couple risks by sort of dive bombing some corners, which might not be the best in like the friendly situation, but sometimes can be the best when you're racing to get ahead. So this guy here is about to hit this bump, and when I was scouting, I recognized that as a really bad spot. You could take the inside to him on the right, which would be fine, but he takes it and he hits that bump. And again, I'm on the outside, which isn't the ideal spot. Later in the course, you can see I take that inside line, but since there's so much traffic there, I'm taking the outside and avoiding that bump, even though I could have really won over it just like that guy. So again, here we go, this spot where the guy just did the cool jump. This spot was a little bit technical, but you could sort of do pretty well in these corners and sort of move up. And you'll see that in the later laps, is that if you take those just as smoothly as possible, you can end up moving up from it. But here I am stuck behind this guy, and so what I'm going to do is, you can see there's a gap ahead of him. It looks like time for me to pass. So I've been sort of recognizing that a little bit more, is when there's some gaps ahead, yeah, it's not like road racing, but you got to recognize that some of these guys might be slowing down more than maybe you want to, and so you got to move up and move up and move up. So anytime you can move up, do it, but also recognize when somebody might be going a little slower than what you're going to end up doing. Now here I dismount really early, and that's bad, right? I want to hit these barriers basically at a running pace when I dismount, and I've been practicing that a little bit more. It's really hard for me coming from the road world, going just to mountain bike SPD cleats and pedals, and it's just a little different world for me. And I've been practicing and practicing and practicing, and maybe you guys have some tips for me, because I'm getting a little better, but every once in a while my foot will slip out. I think this is the one time anyone's passed me in this race. This guy here flies in the inside, doing very well. And look at him, he's fighting for position. So that spot right there was sort of fun. I was able to take those corners as well pretty fast, and it's just a little bit narrow. Here, this guy has another chain. Some other guy has a chain or some sort of technicality. I haven't had one yet this year. Knock on wood. I know I've just jinxed myself that I'm definitely going to have some sort of technical my next race, but I haven't had one yet, and I can't assume they're fun. Now this one is really tight here. You can see that if you take that really well and go fast, you can pretty much destroy yourself into that stake at the end there. I didn't do it at all this race, but you can see here that if you don't take these corners fast, you can see the front of the race is pretty far ahead of us there at the top of that hill. So maybe 20 seconds ahead. Again, I think part of that was because I was so far in the back at the start. I had a whole bunch of traffic to run around. I imagine those guys in the front were taking better lines, or when they didn't have as much traffic. This corner, for some reason, I kept taking super wide, and I do that a couple different times throughout this race. I don't know what that was about that corner, but I was just always taking that wide and almost hitting that stake almost every single time. But back to this idea that, you can take some risks. These guys are about to slow up into this hill, and this hill, you can see, I'll show you some footage of what other guys did the race before mine. So like I was just saying, when you are bunched up like that, like the first group, the first footage there, a lot of people were having to get off their bikes, and to the joy of some of those hecklers, once it gets bunched up, you don't get your best line, you slip, you fall, and then when you're by yourself, like the second set of footage that I showed there, they can take their own line and go pretty quick. So that I'll talk about a little bit further later in this race. And here I take a good risk there, taking it inside, going a little wide there, which is normal, more like a road procedure. So this corner, you can go down this hill really fast and just take a whole bunch of speed with you. It wasn't as slippery as I think a lot of people were thinking. I was able to take this line fairly well throughout this entire race and just use all of that momentum to my advantage. I'm a bigger guy. I'm like 185 at 6'3", but I was using that every single lap to gain a position or two and really just fly down there. I know some people were easing up because it was a little bit easier. There was some pavement and whatnot, but I just used it to my advantage to just go as hard as possible and just fling myself up a couple of positions, and you'll see that on other laps as well. But back to this idea that traffic and lines are sort of what I've been sort of really recognizing this first couple races, is that when you can pick your own line like I'm about to here, when you're not in traffic, it makes your life a lot easier. That's not always going to happen, but if you keep moving up and you don't get bunched up behind some guys, it just works to your advantage, sort of like exponentially, right? So I can move around these guys. I no longer have to worry about running into their wheel, and so you just keep moving up as much as possible. And then every once in a while you get in a position like this where there's a guy ahead of you who's pretty much going the pace you want, if not a little bit slower or faster. And you can use that as sort of like a psychological game of cat and mouse and trying to catch. Now this guy had a technical so bad that he had to carry his bike. I don't know what would cause that. I would hope that I could ride my bike to the pit in most scenarios, but if not, that's unfortunate. That's gotta really suck. But here, they're no longer a psychological game of cat and mouse, right? Now it's like I'm just sitting behind them, so I gotta move up, and that's what I do here. And I've been finding I do that pretty well now. Is use the guys ahead of you to sort of have your own goal. Take the lines like I do here when you're in front and don't have any traffic. Take the best lines you can. Get up to the next guys, and then if there's a gap or you're sort of sitting behind them and slowing up behind them, get around them so that you can sort of see the next group ahead of you and get to them. That dismount and remount was a lot better and a lot smoother. And then you can see I'm about to take some corners fairly well. That gets me back up to this guy. So the psychological game is, okay, I did my corners as fast as I can to get up to this guy. Now I'm on him, and I should probably move around him and pass him so that I can get to the next guy, and that's what I do here. And so I'm pretty happy with how that's been going recently, because now that there's no one ahead of me, I can take my own fastest line through every corner. And here, and you'll see it in the next lap, but I kept taking out my right foot and sort of leaning into this hill and then clipping in back here and then being able to drive through that. And you'll see in the next lap somebody else does it and actually stays clipped in, and as I probably should. But here we are, speeding down this section. You can see there's guys way ahead of me, and just using all that speed to my advantage, and then moving up pretty significantly at that point. And now I'm up with the next guys, or catching up to them, and here I am on them. So again, cat and mouse. Okay, sweet, caught that guy. Now it's time to corner as best I can to catch up the next person, use those cornering skills and use my strength as much as I can to catch up to him. And now I've been on him for too long. Time to move up again. So pretty well executed in this race, at least in my opinion. I've done a lot worse in crit races than in this race. And here I am again, catching up to somebody. Here, he took that pretty well. I do it okay here, pretty smooth. If you guys have any practice tips for dismounting and remounting, let me know. I know some people said, you don't have to clip in with the remounts and you can still pedal without being clipped in. I've been having a difficult time with that. You can say that all you want, and it makes sense, and I tried it, but practice makes perfect, and I'm still having a hard time, even from a guy who does a lot of road racing. It's my first road season, and I did a bunch of road races, but I think this guy is about to flick me through somehow. Look at him. I don't know if he was flipping me through, or just a twist of the elbow, but decided that was a good time to move up, and now I'm going really fast and almost drive myself into that pole, so I'm taking some risks too, which is good, but that's what I got to do to get ahead of him, and then try to catch cat and mouse the next guys. And here we go again. And this is a part where this guy does not clip out. So this guy stays clipped in, and maybe I should have been doing that at this point in the race, because now he's pedaling and I'm just starting to clip in again. So that was an important lesson that maybe I could learn is, even though you try to play it safe and you just keep playing it safe, figure out during the race if it actually is safe or not. And, if it ends up being a safe bet, maybe take a little bit more risks, right? Here we are again, and I'm going to fly past these guys at this time. Just slingshot around. Here we go. Using that to my advantage. There's a guy in red up here. And slingshot pretty close to him. So, man, I was really on my game on that hill for some reason. Because I keep moving up, and yeah, I'm a big guy, so maybe that's part of it, but you can see here, I was able to use my own lines and use this as a cat and mouse, but he's been ahead of me for a good long time, so he's probably in the same sort of pace that I was trying to go, but at a certain point, like right here, we're no longer at the same pace, right? I'm on him, so I need to get around him. I could have taken it right there, I didn't. I could have taken it right here, I didn't. And so maybe that's where I got to recognize a little better is, okay, we're no longer at the same pace. What's the risk I can take to get ahead of you so that I can take my own lines and I don't have any sort of delays anymore? Let's see here what I do. Yeah, a little bit slow. I've been trying to get to the point where I can dismount basically at a running pace into those barriers. Practice makes perfect. Not quite there yet, but that's sort of a good couple seconds because you can see that guy's way ahead of me now. And if you don't practice that and do good at it, there's going to be some gaps that start forming and you're going to just be slower than the next guy. So luckily I'm been doing cornering pretty well this race, and so I get back up on his wheel like I do here. So, even though I lose some seconds in some of my weaknesses like that dismount and remount, I do sort of make up for it with some of these cornerings. And here I see an opportunity, right? This is where I should just drill it. Just drill it, pass them, take your own line, and that's exactly what I do. I even get some encouragement from one of the Velocos guys that I've seen a couple times here. When someone's screaming your name and saying, "You go, Alex," that really makes a world of difference. This sport of cross is sort of unique in that some of the hecklers are, it's almost like a comedy, right? And it makes this race so much more fun when people are, all being positive and whatnot. And a lot of crit races is obviously just a bell, and you don't really hear too much. Maybe move up from a coach or something. But cross racing is just, you're going to hear every bit of it, right? So I just wanted to give a shout out for that, is that, positive words of encouragement go a long way in this sport. So there we go. That hill got me up to another position. Now I'm taking a good long drive through the course with nobody ahead of me I can see yet. And it's getting real dizzy. Anyone having a seizure yet? Because we're about to get back up to these barriers. And there's a guy. Okay, so we're back in the psychological game of cat and mouse. When there's nobody ahead of you, it's almost like the opposite of psychological help. It's, sort of like dismay. But that was basically my race. So I learned quite a bit. One thing that I really am going to do more is take some more risks, obviously within reason. Yes, there's probably some situations where that's going to become bad for me, but we'll sort of find that fine line and then sort of learn from that. The other thing I wanted to learn is how to get empty by the end of the race. I want to be dead. I felt pretty good at the end of this race. Like I felt like I went like full gas in a lot of sections, and I felt like I had given it my all. So that was nice to know. But I need to keep practicing that. The other thing to learn is that first lap, you just got to learn to get around people. Don't really think about the ideal line. Just think, how do I get around all these guys? That's really important the first lap. Cornering is obviously important. Getting the tire pressure right is nice. Registration so that you're not sitting in the back row like I did when I start, and then practicing makes perfect. So a lot of these practices, were mounts and dismounts. But if you have anything else that I should have learned from this race, let me know in the comments. I really have been taking them all and trying to get better. So thank you all for your comments, and thanks for watching.